Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lounge podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin. Today, joined by somebody who we were marveling at how long it has taken for this to take place again. Had him on the show years ago, plural. It has been way too long, but Jason Maples of Temple of Hoop, of Twitter, of all kinds of shit, one of my favorite online people, is here. Thank you very much for hopping on, man. Thanks. How you doing?
I'm good, man. Appreciate you having me on, man. It's always a pleasure to hop on somebody else's, man, especially somebody I have a lot of discourse with. So I'm expecting to have some fun tonight, man.
Yeah, it's going to be good. Today we are going to talk about a couple of the kind of talking points that have come out of these finals and these playoffs and the NBA in general. For one thing, I try not to let like gloating bug me when a team wins. Go ahead, talk your shit. Like I know right now there's a lot of Denver fans who are dunking on Embiid's MVP. I would be doing the same thing if I was a Nuggets fan. So like that's fine. That's in its own thing. But when we start applying morality to the way that teams win, that's where I start. That's where I get bumped a little bit. So we're going to talk about building teams the right way and where that sentiment kind of comes from, and if that is something that actually matters. And then secondly, on the second half of the show, with the amount of success that foreign-born players are having in the NBA, it has led to a lot of discourse about the way that players are developed here in the States, and specifically AAU. And Jason, with your background in basketball, I think that's something that you would like to discuss and throw discuss. I just turned that into two words. But yeah, those are going to be the two subjects. But let's start though with like the notion of building teams the right way. And the thing that Nuggets fans are holding on to here is that, Jamal Murray was drafted by them. Obviously, Nikola Jokic drafted in the second round. Michael Porter Jr. is homegrown too. They seem to forget that Gary Harris and Monty Morris were traded away and brought in for Aaron Gordon and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. But like, that's just, that isn't a part of the story apparently. But does my theory though is that this is a particularly online sentiment that like only people who have a lot of time on their hands think of shit this way. And then on top of that, like it's a very non-competitive sentiment that like, for me, if I was on, when I played pickup or when I played, whatever, it was just like, yeah, just win, like don't stack it. Don't the Kevin Durant thing is where it goes a little too far when he went to the Warriors. But like for the most part, like for me, from where I'm standing, I'm a Vikings fan, man. I just want to see a Super Bowl before I die. Like, let alone win one. I just think, this whole notion of winning a certain way being the morally correct thing to do or the ethical way to go about building a team is kind of missing the point. Where do you stand on it?
My thing is just in the big picture sense, the only thing that I think is probably required to win a championship is having a top five player. I'm not going to say five because it's more than five player. A top tier player. There might be more than five in the league right now. A top tier player. You look in the last few years. Joker this year, obviously. Steph, LeBron, Giannis, Kawhi when he's upright, and I think that's the only requirement. Those teams all were built differently when you think about it. I mean, Toronto finally gave up on DeMar and cashed in and got Kawhi on a buy low situation. The Bucks, they put all their assets into the table after they had their core, then put the rest of the assets into getting Drew to finish what they were building. Denver just stuck it out, which I guess what people are rooting for. I guess that's a story to root for. The Lakers had a bunch of young assets, cashed them in for AD to go along with LeBron and free agents. So it's like all these teams, the Warriors, of course, built theirs from the ground up. Whole core was drafted and then added Wiggins for the fourth championship. So
yeah,
I think that's the beauty in it. Championships can come about any different way. It's a matter of the only thing that's required to me is that do you have that guy? If you have that guy, then by all means, best move to win a championship. However, I do think there's a spectrum or for everything. So I also don't think you need to be flipping a roster every year. Wink, wink. Los Angeles Lakers. I think some type of
Yeah.
continuity is going to be kind of expected and required. I think I will say about Denver's quote unquote the continuity discussion. They knew how to respond every time they hit adversity in the playoffs, and I think
Yeah.
that was a testament to their continuity. I guess the biggest, the quote unquote trouble they got into was when they got tied with Phoenix, and they knew how to respond. They took care of business the next two games. I just think continuity gives you that, you know, that card. Okay, we know where to go when we get in trouble. We know how to respond when we get in trouble
Yeah.
as a group. So I will say that there's pros and cons to every way you want to do it. I think that's the beauty of team building in the NBA. And contrary to a popular belief, I think there are many ways to win in the NBA. It's not just. I think the stat that almost made me cry tears of joy was that none of the teams in the final four teams except Boston were in the top 10 in 3-point attempts in the playoffs. And I
Yeah.
think that's the big thing with shooting. No, you need
Yeah.
good players. You need good players in a system that maximizes them. And I think that was very happy. I was very happy to see that because I think there are so many teams who just rely way too much on the three ball instead of just taking the best shot possible, and it kills them in the playoffs because they don't have no offensive diversity. So
Yeah.
sorry for rambling, but I think the main thing is get the player first, and everything else comes after that. Get that guy first.
Yeah, it has been kind of funny when when I hear people talking about the Nuggets, and it's like, wow, it's incredible GM work and incredible front office and everything that they did. And it's just like, no, Jokic became the best player in the league and they stayed healthy in the playoffs. Like, that's a
Right.
pretty tried and true method there. I also think, like, to kind of go back to it though, like, I'm looking at it more as a fan, right?
Right.
Does it matter to you if the team that you're rooting for, it won with homegrown players, or if they won, so like I'm a Laker fan, right? And I grew up with the three-peat and with Kobe winning the back-to-back championships there. And do those championships mean any more because it was Kobe and it was a homegrown guy versus the championship in 2020 when it was like the Lakers were a disaster and then all of a sudden we're able to win a championship? Like, both of those rings, all of those titles, to me, especially when you take into account that we lost Kobe that year and it was like that much more emotional that they
Right.
were
Right.
able to
Right.
win that year. But like in terms of like what a championship means to me, it's just win. I don't care if it's
Right.
homegrown, free agency, trades, bring them all in. Like, it's just like, just win. That's all
Yeah,
that matters.
the only thing I'll say and I agree, the championship. I think every season is its own journey. I think Phil Jackson was really, really good about that. How kept teams focused for multiple three-peats. I think he was
Yeah.
really good about dividing every season into its own journey and don't let them run into each other. I thought he was like the way he described that in his books is like masterful to me. But the thing that I will say is that over the years you do get attached to certain players. So I think that makes it mean for those guys who have been
Yeah.
there. You grew up rooting for those guys year to year, and to see those guys get over the hump, I think that means something. Like, Warriors of 2015, seeing Curry deal with the ankle injury for those years, and
Yeah.
then get over the hump, first championship in 40 years. That I think that meant something. Same thing with this year with Denver. They watched Jokic second round pick. They decided to trade Nurk and keep him. They invested in that team. They drafted Jamal Murray. So when you grow up with a group of players or a player, I think in that aspect it can mean something. But
That's fair.
for the team, I think it's all the same. But I do understand people having attachment to players that hey, we drafted this guy. He's been with us the whole time. I do understand that part of it. I think it's definitely something to look at on both sides.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. For I think an important aspect of that is the doubt, right? Like you mentioned
Yeah, yeah.
Curry, and Warriors fans were never sure this guy was ever going to be able to stay healthy, right? His ankles were made of paper mache, it seemed like, for a
I
while.
remember.
And then yeah, and then with the Nuggets, right? Jamal Murray goes down, and MPJ has multiple surgeries, and now they get over the hump with this team, and yeah, that's going to mean something. And like, even you even look back at the three-peat with Shaq and Kobe. They were down 14 in the fourth quarter there
But so,
against
yep,
Portland,
yep,
and you're like,
yep.
this really isn't going to happen. They're going to trade Kobe, and then they're going to try to bring in somebody who's more proven next to Shaq, and this isn't going to work.
People forget. In '98, everybody was talking about a Bulls Lakers finals. They get swept by
Yeah.
Utah, then get beat next year by San Antonio, right?
Yep.
Then they bring Phil. So there was a lot riding on that fourth quarter. I
Yeah.
think people haven't realized there was a lot riding on that fourth quarter.
Right. It was just because the way that I kind of remember it, I wasn't a Del Harris fan. I thought like he was just the worst. But like I remember being really frustrated because it just felt like at all times they were all playing like scared to get too loud or like really be themselves, right? And then Phil shows up and it's like there is no other excuse. You brought in the best coach of all time.
Right.
And if this doesn't work out, one of Shaq or Kobe are going to, get the blame here. It's probably going to be Kobe because Shaq was such an investment. So it's like, please make it work in that fourth quarter.
Right.
And that's what made that the explosion of emotion. That's absolutely fair. Like as it pertains to what championships mean and stuff like that. But like all that said, let's say the Nuggets don't win, right? And they stick with like Malone for a little too long, or they never move like MPJ or whatever or something like that. And they never like fully do everything they might be able to do to optimize Jokic. That becomes like sadder than it would be if they won the championship by moving one of those pieces, right? Like to me, it's just like just win, just go out and do what it takes to win.
Well, the thing is, I think to the credit, they did that. They tinkered with the roster over. They tried with the Gary Harrises and the Monte Morrises, and I think they realized they saw
Will Barton.
Yeah, they saw how teams attacked Joker in the playoffs. I think they did a great self-assessment. Say, hey, we need to if we're going to keep Murray and Joker together, let's surround them with 3-and-D guys. They went and got a super athletic wing who can. Aaron Gordon was absolute X factor in this playoffs. Defended every other team's best wing throughout the playoffs. KCP, again, underrated skill of his, just fabulous chasing guys who come off screens all around the floor. I think just very underrated skill. Able to stay with shooters, and then on top of that, you drafted Brown, who's a great role player rookie. You're probably going to lose Bruce Brown because of he was a great ad. You're going to lose him.
Thank God.
You're going to get priced out. But Christian Brown fits right into that role. So you drafted, the replacement for the guy you're probably going to lose. But I think they did a great self-assessment with that, and they tinkered that roster like on paper what they wanted, like what they think would maximize Joker and just put it into play beautifully about what they thought. Because Joker's obviously we don't see too many point centers, right?
Yeah.
So they had to maximize the roster, accordingly. I think they did that very, very well. Kudos to the front office, man.
I was listening to the DNVR guys today talk about Jokic and his defense, and I've seen a lot of and I myself have talked about how like I think actually Jokic is actually like a little underrated defensively, right? And his just like competition on that side, right? Sometimes what drives me crazy is seeing bigs who don't have the motor to keep up on that end and actually like read plays and move into the right spot. So you're just not an outright disaster. And I think he's done a really good job of like becoming that. And what I don't want to what I think people as a result of the moment might eventually do is that is a really good defensive team. KCP is a fantastic defender. And Michael Porter Jr. is actually pretty underrated on that side of the court.
Full 180 on defense.
Yeah, and then Aaron Gordon, I think you can make a real case as like the best wing defender in the league right now. When Kawhi isn't healthy, and Gordon,
he's up there. He's up there.
What he did to like KD, where he was making him work the way that he was making him work, and even like with LeBron, remember like LeBron played. And against Dillon Brooks, and he wasn't able to quite make a move, but was still able to like at times get to the basket when he absolutely needed to. And then against like the Warriors, it was just especially when he found out that Wiggins had like the broken rib cartilage or something that. He just put him in the basket and did so with the entire, greater San Francisco area. And then, but like with Gordon was like a combination, I think, of Dylan Brooks and Andrew Wiggins, and that he could move his feet and he was physical. He's such a great pickup,
I think just
for,
like being 6'8", 235,
yeah.
but he can still move his feet.
Former
Like
dunk contest.
he's not gonna be
champ.
bullied. Super athletic, doesn't back down. I actually, man, I just on a personal note, like I'm from the Bay Area, so I've seen Aaron since high school when he
Yeah.
played with the Midi and then played for the Oakland Soldiers on the AAU circuit. So just kind of seeing him, just his whole journey, where
Yeah.
hey, I'm this big 5-star, everything athlete. I go to Orlando. I'm humbled a bit by, I'm not a number one. I get traded to a team. I'm going to
Yeah.
be the third option here, maybe fourth some days when APJ's got it going. I'm just going to completely buy into that.
Yeah.
That journey is for a player to humble himself like that over. I think that's to be commended. Does not happen that way all the time.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, is that something that an AAU coach can teach a player or prepare a player for? Like, is that, or even any coach, like, regardless, like, so these guys were at that level where they have been the best player on every team that they have played on up until that moment.
Yeah.
Is there any way to prepare somebody for that, humbling moment?
I mean, honestly, some of that stuff might go beyond the coaching, man. It's like, how are the parents? How are the family? How's the inner circle? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? What are they telling him? You know what I mean? Because there's, I'm trying not to point play, but there's a bunch of players in the NBA around the trade deadline. People were hesitant to trade for. It's like, well, he wants more shots. Well, he wants a bigger role. You know what I mean? So it's like, and that was causing teams to hesitate. I'm not going to throw any names out there because I'm not, in these guys' locker rooms, but just that was the rumor for some guys.
Yeah.
He wants a bigger role. He wants this instead of like, hey, he wants to win. You know what I mean? So that's,
I mean, Thomas Bryant, right? Like he asked to be, like we can say he asked for a trade, and then got traded. Now it works out. He winds up winning a championship, and I think he there's still a pathway for him finding a role in this league. But yeah, like that's an example of
right.
Of that. And yeah, it's just it's so tough because you are so practiced. For me, life is just about habits, right?
Right.
Life is just you wake up a certain way, you approach the day a certain way, and then for some of these guys to all of a sudden have their reality kind of shattered and realize, holy shit, that guy's just better, right? Like Charles Barkley tells the story of there wasn't a single player over the course of his career who he ever thought was better than him until he played Michael Jordan in the finals. He's like, motherfucker, that guy is just better than me.
That was one of the funniest interviews. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm curious, like if you have any experience or anything like that with like conversations with players heading into that, like you're gonna reach a point. And hopefully, by the way, like that's the goal, kind of, right? Like you want to reach a point where you're playing at such a level that it is incumbent on you to assume a role and be a part of a winning organization. Like that, that gets you paid, I think, now in the NBA more than it did, 10 years ago.
Right. Well, I'm trying to ramble on like a whole world view here or cultural thing, but I think just in general, in America, we're trained to be individualistic.
Yeah.
I think that even filters down into the recreational things like sports. You know what I mean? So I think it's always about what can I get, what can I do, and I think that is the foundation of that behavior being practiced. On the other side of it, I think there are a lot of fabulous programs and coaches and trainers that are really into these guys, telling them to be, hey, how are you helping a team if you're not scoring? Those are like, that's like I've seen a lot of, that's the foundational question for a lot of great coaches that I know, that I watched, that I've seen practice that. And I think, AG got that at some point. Hey, how are you helping a team if you're not scoring? Are you going to rebound? Are you going to defend? Are you going to play make? And I think, that's in him. A lot of guys don't have that, but that's in him. And
Who do you think is the next wing or player? Because like we saw it with Wiggins, right?
Right.
Where he assumed a role and the Warriors won a championship because he became like the best version of a winning player in that system. We have Gordon now. Is there anybody that you're looking at? You're like, yeah, if anybody unlocks that guy, look out.
Yeah, well, I've been, burning incense and sage trying to get Brandon Ingram traded to Portland where he can be perfectly slotted in a number two role
Uh-huh.
behind Dame. So, hopefully that can be it. I'm guessing you're talking about more of a role player guy. I just had to throw that nugget out there.
Yeah. Well, what's funny though is that like Wiggins for a while they considered him a 1 or a
Yeah,
1A or a
exactly.
2, and he just wasn't that. He was never going to be that.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that he ended up being the Warriors' second best player in the playoff run
That's
last
fair.
year. He was
Hmm.
just, I will say that. Also, it helps when your number one is an all time number one. That also makes it a
Yeah.
lot easier. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I'm trying to think here. Man,
Ingram I think is a really good example though. Like he is somebody who I like I think and I think this is something that you really push back on in really interesting ways is this notion of retrofitting efficiency, right? Like there are certain shots that need to be the shot diet that a team gets,
right.
and every offense is designed to getting as many of those shots as possible. But then you get into the playoffs, and those are the shots that really good defenses are really working to not allow you to take. And so, like somebody like Brandon Ingram, who we see is somewhat less efficient because of his shot diet, actually could be hugely efficient because he's really good at the shots that you kind of have to take in the postseason.
Yeah, and I think we saw that in the 6 game series that they had. You know, unfortunately, there is a 6-7 behemoth that cannot stay on the floor, so we can never see that team its
Yeah.
best version of itself. It's always a patchwork issue or just trying to put whoever out there, but whatever. Yeah, I've said this. I mentioned on earlier today on this show. Um, Lakers were Lakers were 13th or 14th in 3 point attempts. Denver was 10th, and Miami was 13th in 3 point
Yeah.
attempts. It was like in the playoffs. So it's like they also had all three had great players that can get to the basket or make mid range shots. You know what I
We'll
mean?
get to the
So
line.
get to the
Yeah.
line. I thought the Lakers were really good at that. For all the ref talk all season, they got to the free throw line between LeBron, AD. Dennis gets downhill. Uh,
Hmm.
even
Reeves.
after they got Rui, Rui gets to the basket. Reeves understands how to create leverage when he gets a step on somebody. It just, it's really a skill. It really is a skill.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I this is kind of a perfect segue here into coaching, right, and development and stuff like
Right.
that. And it just I guess for those who maybe aren't as online or whatever, but basically every right now, you look at the MVP candidates, right? It's Giannis and it's Embiid and it's Jokic, and then you have Luca, and then you have to go a little ways before you get to like the Jason Tatum's and American born best players in the league or MVP candidates, right? And that is used as an opportunity to take shots at the way that we develop players. But I actually had for Substack, for the podcast that I do over there for Substack, I had Lee Ellis on, and I don't know if you know what Lee Ellis is doing, formerly of No Dunks Inc. But now he's doing this project where he's going over to Europe and he's playing pickup games, or he's going all over the world. He's playing all of these games all over the place, and he's getting a taste of like what different approaches there are to basketball elsewhere. And I asked him, like, what do you think is going into the amount of success individually that some of these guys are having? And he gave a really interesting answer that made me think that like maybe child labor laws are what's holding us back here. But like, because he said that you have these guys playing professionally against grown ass men
At
when
13.
they're really young, and and I'm no athlete, yeah, as people watching can tell, but like when I was growing up, Dad would take me to a gym and I would play 3-on-3, 4-on-4 against grown ass men. And you just like that you have to they're just more developed, right? You have
Right.
to learn to play against that kind of player and learn some of the tricks and stuff to become more efficient in those movements. On top of that, there's like the societal aspects of like playing for a paycheck and playing against guys who are playing for a paycheck, and there's
Right.
that goes into it. But I also think like, and this is where I think the conversation loses you and it loses me, is this notion that like AAU is bad. That like AAU is where we are wrong, and there are things inherently wrong in AAU, and I think there are like societal factors that extend way beyond that. But when
Yes.
you when
Yes.
you when you hear the conversation about AAU, like what's your general takeaway?
Um. So I just want to, before I go into this now, I just want to say like two things. One, when David Stern convinced professional basketball players to go play in that Olympics in 1992, this was the goal, to
Yeah.
globalize the game.
Mm-hmm.
Now that it's being, starting to be accomplished, I don't understand why the world is not being celebrated opposed to just,
Yeah.
okay, let's take a dump on them. So I don't want like that conversation. Like, this is what the NBA, this is what basketball wanted. Let's
Also, by
globalize
the
the game.
way, it's kind of sort of how you fix the All Star game.
Yeah,
Like
it's like, yeah, it's like,
please.
okay, it's what you want. It's like, yeah, you're never gonna catch American football here. So let's globalize the game and try to be number two behind soccer in the world.
Yeah.
Like, so
Mm-hmm.
that's like, I think Stern saw that early. You're just not gonna catch football. You look at you can put the Cleveland Browns versus the Jacksonville Jaguars in a rival NBA Finals game. It's just
In London at like 8 in the morning.
right. So it's like, it's not gonna catch it. So let's just say two thumbs up to basketball for globalizing the game successfully. I definitely think it's getting there. That's what I do want to say. Instead of knocking down AU, let's celebrate what the goal of the NBA was. They're
Yeah.
getting there years later. That team planted seeds. All the great foreign players, nearly all of them go back to that.
Yeah.
Hey, I know somebody who watched that. I watched film
How
of that.
specifically
Yeah, right,
said that like that dream team, like
right.
he
So
watched them play basketball and was like, I want to do that.
yeah, so it's like
My dad's a doctor, and I'm like, I want, it helps. I'm 7 feet tall, but I want to do that.
yeah, that's the So I think that's the first part that's very frustrating to me. The second part is try not to get you in any trouble here.
Have at it.
It's just
We're
that
technically colleagues. We're
we are.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
sitting here, I watch. So I'm a Seattle Mariners fan. We never win. I just love Ken Griffey Jr. and stuck with the team. I watch
Mhm.
baseball. All these, Central America Latino players come over here and are dominating the sport. And the conversation about developing American baseball players has never been seriously broached.
Yeah.
And some of that, I'm not saying everybody, some of that is a lot of dog whistles from
Yeah.
a perspective, in my opinion. Just to be frank with, you know, how some people watch the game, what they want to root for, styles of play. Some of that is a cultural dog whistle to me.
Yeah, we just saw Team USA lose in the World Baseball Classic to
See,
Japan. And right
it's like
after that, it wasn't
said,
like what's wrong with pony
Yeah.
baseball? What are we doing wrong?
Yeah, so it's like that's the other frustration. Like there are parallels with other sports. When other sports they want to globalize, nobody's going to catch football here. You want to globalize your sport.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? So goals are being accomplished, but the negative reaction is overwhelming. Just wanted to get that out there. The thing about AAU to me, like everything else, obviously there are good parts and bad parts. I went over some of the bad parts. First of all, it's some of it at the lower level, the lower and mid levels is extremely, unorganized. You got anybody coaching. But I'm gonna tell you, man, just being from the inner city, a lot of that stuff, man, the goal is not necessarily it's to keep kids off the streets, man. Like that's kind of like to give kids something to do. And in that aspect, some of that is successful, man. I know a lot of kids who they end up professional basketball players, but having a coach, speak life into them and, tell them good things and give them some direction, gave them an out.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Gave them a something to look forward to during the week, like something I'm just not out here getting into trouble. And I
yeah,
think that part is being very glossed over. Like you mentioned earlier, there are some socioeconomic issues that go into that. There's no 14-year-olds getting paid to play basketball out here.
I
Playing in
agree
pro
that
league.
Coach Carter was a great movie.
Well, you want me to hit the studio button and get out of here. I'm trying to have a moment and you threw that at me.
I'm sorry.
It's all
I
good,
couldn't
man.
help myself. I
It's
couldn't
all
help
good.
myself.
I get it every day. I should never let y'all know I hate that movie. Once a week. Once a week, somebody hits me with something. Yeah, so I
Sorry.
mean, I know it's good. And then, that's the main thing. Some of the basketball stuff out here, the programs, it's not to make kids professional basketball, but it's to give them something to do and
Yeah.
just keep them from from other
And then you
other
kind of
things.
realize, oh shit, this kid's really good.
Yeah, right.
Fuck. What do
And
we do
then-
here?
yeah.
Yeah.
And then, at the top level, like everything, when money gets involved, there are politics with guys getting ranked, guys being pushed
Yeah.
beyond certain guys. Like that's it. That's what happens when money gets involved in anything. It gets, it gets tainted to
Corrupt.
a certain point. Yeah,
Mhm.
but I will say this. You know what? 89% of the National Basketball Association played AAU basketball.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's working to a point at the top level, especially, EYBL, Adidas Gauntlet, the Under Armour circuit. You do see some of the top players play against each other. You do. And then, you got the under 18s, the FIBA under 18s, where they get to connect with college coaches and get to get really coached over the course of a summer. I think that's good. You got the G League Ignite, where they get the guys who feel that they're on that level. They get to play for a professional coach for a season before they go into the draft in a professional G League type situation. So, there are things that are positive about the American development system. And if it was that, flagrantly bad, why is the vast majority of the NBA, playing
From
AAU
that
basketball from that
Mhm.
system? And you
Yeah.
say the game is getting better. Also, when, overseas players come over here and flame out, nobody's,
I was just going
cracking
to say
down on
that.
how terrible their development system is. It just is. I think, again, like you said, you were talking earlier about, the way somebody builds a team. It's the same thing. The way somebody plays, or the way somebody, decides to build themselves as a basketball player. Just say you like it more. It's okay. If you don't like some of the dribbling, the 1-on-1, the ISO play, that's fine. If you prefer some of the other stuff that's Euro-wise, the movement, offense, that's fine. Just say
Mhm.
that, but don't try to act like it's better when it's literally not. Because the AAU system breeds the most professional basketball players in the world, literally. The
Yeah.
most professional basketball players in the world come from AAU basketball.
Well, NBA players, right? Because
NBA players. You're right.
Yeah.
The NBA players. Oh, but you can go. But that's because overseas, how many of those teams are littered with Division I guys who played
Yeah.
at AAU?
That's
and
also
kids-
fair.
So it's like they're
Yeah.
all over the world.
Yeah, I think to me, a lot of this is circumstance. There aren't a ton of Greek players in the NBA, and it's not like we aren't sitting here saying is the country of Greece failing the sport of basketball? It's not. We aren't really getting that, and yet the representative of Greece is really effing good in Giannis. So it's just I think the point that I agree with the most, and frankly the reason I wanted to bring you on is because whenever something happens, we are so quick to criticize the thing that fell short or isn't living up to maybe expectations or whatever. Like the Miami Heat, I listened to Levitard and that show earlier today, and Dan, I really respected it. It was just no, I'm not going to say that I'm disappointed in this 8 seed Miami Heat team or this 8 seed Florida Panther team for losing to two juggernauts at the top of the sport. We can say that one team lived up to expectations and another team exceeded expectations, but still wasn't quite as good as the other team that they were going up against. And we can celebrate the fact that Denver was really good. And I think what we can celebrate is that, there are players who were coming over from overseas who are really effing good. And I think for me, the diversification of the sport is, to me, the more important story here.
Yeah,
The
thank you.
notion
Yes.
that like the notion that like we are watching a player in Jokic bring that Euro ball over and have that success, and now it's just a matter of like, all right, how's a team that doesn't have Nikola Jokic, that doesn't have Luka Doncic, that doesn't have Giannis Antetokounmpo on their roster, how are they going to beat that style of basketball? And like the diversity, like when it's properly applied, it leads to in that competition that if it's allowed to occur freely, that competition is going to make the entire economy, that entire industry, that much better. It's going to raise the bar of that entire industry. So like rather than whine about, well, golly gee, where's the American the FIBAs are going to take place this year, right? And whenever Team USA goes over to play, I think it's in Japan. Um, Whenever Team USA goes over to the play, we're going to be the heavyweight favorites, and that's despite not having those guys on it. And where are those players coming from?
Right.
So clearly something right is taking place.
Again, under 16 FIBA. I just pulled it up. Under 16 FIBA's men's basketball team, 8 straight gold medals. That's under 16 and under. That's at 8 straight. So you know what I mean? It's like,
Let alone what's happening on the women's side of the game, where
yeah.
we are
So
just
it's like,
absolutely. I think we beat some team. I think it might have been FIBA under 16s that won like 88-33 or something earlier today or whatever. But yeah,
I just think so. They're like, people are upset, or using the fact that the top 0.5% of NBA players aren't, or the top 0.01%, the cream of the crop, is
yeah,
not American to excoriate the entire development system. I'm looking like, how many 7-footers move like Giannis?
yeah, yeah.
It's like, how many, like,
We've literally never seen Jokic
we
before.
haven't seen that. We haven't seen a player like Jokic before. Like, they're unicorns. Even if Wemby ends up hitting his ceiling, we haven't
Yeah,
seen a player that size move like that.
yeah,
There's no development. I don't care what you develop. There's nothing to match 7 feet moving like a 6'5" guard.
yeah,
The same thing with KD. When it's like watching KD was like, it's nothing you can do with that. When he's
yeah,
in his prime, like it's the same thing. You guys are freaks of nature. Like,
yeah,
Luka's the one who's like probably normally sized, but just been playing pro ball since he was 14, incredibly skilled. It's just another set of circumstances that put him in position to be that guy.
yeah. That
And
would be
he's having trouble winning over here.
Yes, that's true. Well, I mean, it doesn't help that Dallas, decided to
Yeah.
trade for Kyrie, but like the only thing, and the reason I brought up Lee talking about it is, it would be nice to see in some way. Maybe it's happening with the G League, and maybe with NIL, you're going to have players stay in college a little bit longer, so that you do have more experience against guys with like a paycheck on the line, or like grown ass men, and that experience there, like that kind of stuff does help. And we do have labor laws here, so that would stop a 16, and the NBA doesn't want, their owners don't want to draft a kid coming straight out of high school because of the Kwame Browns of the world, and they've made that decision. But yeah, if there was one tweak or one addition to development here in the States, it would be more competition against different age groups. But that's really hard to just kind of like snap and hope that just appears. It doesn't work like that. And even with not having that in place, I think we're doing fine. And I do think it's a matter right now, like the idea that the sport would expand across the entire globe, and we wouldn't find unicorns in every corner of the world is so ridiculous that like I find myself kind of cackling at like those frustrations. But yeah, I think I'm really excited though, like for these FIBAs, and for the fact that the game is as diverse as it is, and all that means is that the sport is going to get that much more fun to watch. Like
Hey
that
man,
should be the takeaway.
Hey, I get to watch Brandon Ingram and Austin Reeves on the same team, man. When I tell you I'm not gonna miss a game,
Yeah, it's gonna it's gonna be
I
fun.
get to watch. I get to
This
watch
tournament's
Bi
gonna
and
be
Austin Reeves,
incredible.
man.
Yeah, I thought for a second I was like, hold on, what? Like, I thought I missed a Woj notification, but no,
No,
no
they're on the same team.
that Team USA team is going to be really fun. All right, I'm going to get you out of here. Before I do, is there anything that you want to plug? Anything specific that you want to draw some attention to?
I know, man. Just again, Blue Wire to Blue Wire, employee. Make sure you follow Temple of Hoop. We're also on the Blue Wire Network, wherever you get your pods. Temple of Hoop, myself, Kings, my boy Jordan. Similar to this, just come in, shooting the shit about random NBA topics, basketball topics, and just having fun with it, man.
Kings had me blocked for the longest time, and we had never interacted. And I think he lost his account,
Yeah.
and which sucks. Like that would drive me insane. But one, I guess, quote unquote positive here is that I now get to see his tweets,
No,
and
see,
I appreciate his takes on stuff. So shouts to Kings, and again, Temple of Hoop is where you can find Jason talking about basketball. Also, like he said, with Blue Wire, you also coach, man. And that's something that I wanted to touch on a little bit more here, but that just means I have to bring you on sometime before like 2 years from now.
I'm with it. I'm with it, man. Again, shout out Contra Costa College, man. The JUCO grind is definitely different. If you've seen Last Chance U, especially with ELAC,
So great.
we play in that same state, so some of the same issues, living situations. A lot of guys dealing with some issues on and off the floor that we have
Yeah.
to address every day. So I'm in that, man. I love it though. I love it. If I can just change one guy's life this season, is worth it for me, man. That's why I do what I do.
That's really really cool. So again, Jason, thank you very much for hopping on. Best of luck to Brandon Ingram to hopefully get out of New Orleans and go and play with Portland. Whatever it takes, man. I'm pulling for him too. I've always liked Brandon. Actually, he was the first Laker that we had on this show. And like a legitimate career accomplishment for me was getting him to
Wow.
laugh on the show. Like because
Wow.
you know him, like he
Yeah.
does not laugh. He is very like there is zero bullshit in his atmosphere, and yeah, getting him to laugh was really cool. So yeah, rooting for Brandon. Thanks again in a ton, and we'll talk to you soon.
Peace.